Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Regional Development Australia YouTube channel for RDA Perth. And today we have with us Chris Oughton, who is the CEO with Kwinana Industry Council, which is an industrial area down here in the Perth region. So, Chris, tell me a little bit about your organization. What do you guys do?
A lot of people will ask me that question. We're an industry association, quite small, but we represent a lot of the large companies in the Kwinana industrial area, which is Perth's major industrial area, in fact, major industrial area for the state. It's commonly referred to as the state of WA's premier industrial area. So my job as CEO is to advocate on behalf of the members' interests, and that's the collegiate interest, so not necessarily the interests of one company, but what's affecting them all.
Fantastic. So with that, how many members do you have with your organization?
Total members about 35.
Mm-hmm.
We have two levels of membership. Our full members, there's only 9, and they contribute, we're 100% funded by our members, and they contribute about 85% of what our earnings are, and the other 25 or so of the associate members, the other 15%. So they're very distinct groups.
So tell us a little bit about the Kwinana area. What's actually down there?
Well, in the industrial area, we range from the major cement supplier for the state. So Alcoa, for example, needs cement in its processes. We have the Alcoa, one of the 3 Alcoa bauxite refineries, alumina refineries. We have the 3 refineries, Alcoa refineries, export their alumina from Kwinana. We have the BP oil refinery. We've got major chemical manufacturers, major fertiliser manufacturers, Tronox making titanium dioxide, a very big, worldwide important facility. We have CSBP that produces a lot of fertilisers originally, but they've been here a long time as well and have moved into the industrial chemicals, so that's explosives and reagents and so forth. Then we have fuel distribution companies, chemical distribution companies. There is Nickel West, which is South 32, it's known as now, and that produces the nickel for export. And further down, CBH, which is the Southern Hemisphere's largest grain exporting terminal. Wow.
So, and I understand that new companies moved in, Tianqi.
Yes.
They're undertaking processing of lithium or spodumene into lithium hydroxide, which is really fantastic. As you're aware, and part of RDA Perth is undertaking a study into the lithium industry for Western Australia. So, in terms of Tianqi and what they're doing, what do you think some of the opportunities at Kwinana exist?
So what we have now with the Kwinana industrial area at this point is some pretty old technologies that have upgraded their technologies over many decades, in fact. But it's reached a point where it needs a reinvention. Not to say that it will stop doing what it's doing, but it's time for something else to come along. There is a wave of industrial development heading our way. Tianqi, the lithium producer, is in essence the first of those new generation secondary processing operations, and it's a success story. There are others in pursuit that will come in behind, and there's other technologies coming as well to do other things. There's plenty of room. There's 2,000 hectares of developed land in what we call the Western Trade Coast, and there's still 4,000 hectares undeveloped. So there's plenty of room to grow. So this is Tianqi is signalling a very important watershed moment for the state's premier industrial area.
Fantastic. So what does Kwinana have to offer for companies that are looking for an industrial area in Western Australia?
Well, shall I be selfish and say Kwinana Industries Council? What else it has to offer? We have export facilities. We have private and public port jetty facilities. We have a pretty good rail system, although when we get the new port, I guess we'll be talking about that later, that will upgrade that, which it needs. We have very good road access. We have the pipeline corridors. The Kwinana industrial area is widely regarded as the world's best practice example of industrial symbiosis at work. And industrial symbiosis is where one company's byproducts or waste become the inputs to another company, or another company produces an input directly for another company. So it's utilities and waste products and specially produced products for other companies. And there's 158 of those synergy exchanges happening as we speak.
Wow, and so you're saying that grain goes out at Kwinana. So tell me a little bit about, so that obviously there's an existing port, and I know there's been lots of discussion around Fremantle as the inner harbour and Kwinana as the outer harbour. Tell us about the port facilities that exist currently at Kwinana.
Okay, heading from the south is the grain, starting with the grain terminal. That's a private jetty, very busy. Moving north from that, we come to the Kwinana Belt jetty. That's the Fremantle Ports jetty. It's berth constrained, and the new port will fix that, we hope. And that carries high value solid materials and also liquids for certain specific customers. It's primarily an import facility. Heading further up the coast is the BP oil refinery jetty. That's owned by BP, but it's on a state government seabed lease. Further north again is the Kwinana Belt terminal. That's again a Fremantle Ports export facility, berth constrained and rail constrained. So again, we need the port to happen, the new port. There is plenty of room around for the expansion land side for storage of those solid ores that are exported in could be exported in greater volumes out of there. Then moving again north, we have the Alcoa Alumina jetty. That's another private jetty on a seabed lease. Then further north again, we go up into the AMC, the Australian Marine Complex, and that has a lot of seaside interface without the need for jetties, but it's got boat lifters and so forth.
Incredible. So there is a lot of discussion about the development of the new harbour at Kwinana, and the state government has committed funds and have also set up an organisation or Westport, to look at this, and they're looking at taking 2 years to basically identify what needs to happen there. So in terms of Fremantle and Kwinana, what are the opportunities at Kwinana, and what can we do to actually move that forward and get that message out about the new outer harbour at Kwinana?
There is so much to do, but when you boil it all down, it's a very, very simple scenario. If the freight task is moved from the inner harbour at Fremantle, which is constrained insofar as transport in and out, and the depth of the port itself, if that freight task is moved to Kwinana, it's got to go somewhere. That's bulk and containerised. It's got to go somewhere, so where does it go? Logically, the new port would be a land-backed extension, reclamation, from the AMC in the north all the way down to the Kwinana Bulk Terminal, the KBT. What that does is provide the opportunity to get a deep water port for the large container ships. This is all about enhancing the potential for the existing companies and future companies to be internationally competitive. Their competitors are international companies that export from other parts of the world. And we must, if this state is going to get back again on its feet well and truly, it will do that on the back of export business. And the way we do that is to create efficient transport links, ports, roads and rail. The advent of the port coming to Kwinana is a catalyst for all of the constraints to come off the industrial area. They will all be fixed, and that will open up export opportunities for industries that don't yet exist out in the regions, because at the moment they can't get into Fremantle. those export companies need vast volumes in order to compete internationally. Vast volumes. That can't happen in Fremantle. Fremantle was designed for other purposes, and the McGowan government is right when it went to the election saying we will plan for and build and transition the freight traffic from Fremantle to Kwinana.
So there's a lot of conversation around this, and what people are saying, well, the Fremantle's fine. It's got enough for future capacity. What does that mean?
Well, what it means is the person that's saying that isn't thinking outside of the box. If the argument is about the capacity of the inner harbour to keep doing what it's doing, then the answer is yes, it can. But it's an import port. Nearly a third of what's exported in containers is fresh air. They're empty. The next most common commodity exported is hay or chaff. So what does that say? Well, what it says is that whilsoever we have the configuration we have at the moment, if 1,000 people want a flat screen TV, a container comes in. If 2,000 people want a flat screen TV, 2 containers come in. It's a population-driven import scenario. It does not take account of the other side of the coin, which is the export economy. So when I see a shipload of iron ore leave, or a shipload of grain leave, or a shipload of live animals leave, I think, what a waste. Where is the secondary processing? Where are the industries that create that high value product and export that? That's what Tanshi's doing. It's taking its $80 a tonne spodumene as an export commodity and turning it into a $22,000 a tonne. The expertise is here. All of the synergies exist to assist that business to be internationally competitive. We have the freight links, the supply chains. What we don't have is an internationally competitive port that it can export through. So it'll go, those 7,000 containers of that product will go up through Fremantle and work their way through the congestion, the trucks on the road, through that congestion, and get into the fence where it operates quite efficiently, the port. In an Australian sense, it's quite an efficient port. It has the capacity to do that. But getting it there is the problem. So when we talk about congestion, people think it's linear. This is another one of these linear arguments, you see. So an extra truck, an extra bit of congestion. But when you get congested, the extra truck, it starts getting exponentially congested. So those 7,000 containers in a year will be more like the effect of 70,000 because it's an exponential thing. So the capacity of the port to operate satisfactorily within its fence is correct. And those who say that are right, but they're not thinking about what goes on outside of the fence. They're not thinking about what are the constraints, what are the costs on existing exporting and importing industry of that scenario. That's why I say this isn't about the capacity of the port, existing port arrangements. It's about facilitating the economic development of the state.
Brilliant. So I understand the Kwinana Industries Council has put out some reports recently about trade flows. And as you were saying, that we are experts in exporting air. So what do those reports also say in terms of some of those trade flows and some of the other opportunities that exist?
The reports are on our website at the bottom of our homepage, kic.org.au. Click on the button, the reports are there for anybody to see. But in essence, and starting on page 16, there are the series of recommendations. They go over about 8 or 9 pages for the feds, for the state government, and for local government. There's a whole raft of recommendations in there. But the key to this, it looks at what are the facilitators to generate this future potential export trade, and what might that look like in terms of volumes. So it goes into that analysis in quite level of detail. But it's not just about that. It looks at the stimulus potential for those export industries. So the 4,000 hectares of undeveloped land in the industrial area currently, if they were filled to the extent that the existing 2,000 hectares of industrial land in terms of employee numbers, instead of the 5,000 direct workers and 26,000 indirect workers, so a total of 30,000 workers that the current industry is responsible for generating, and the 16 billion into the state economy, you multiply that by 3, because there's 4,000 hectares as yet undeveloped. Now, some of those sites I'm talking about are very big sites, and the support industries that come in will be much more concentrated and labour efficient. But even if we cut those numbers in half, they're still very big numbers of economic stimulus, economic contribution to our state budgets, and employee numbers. And everybody knows that the secret, so it's not a secret, but everybody knows that the key to getting economic development going is getting people into work and creating opportunities, new opportunities. So the trade flows reports go into that in a lot of detail. But there are things that can happen that are in control, are in government control. So in terms of the federal government, an economic trade zone.
What is that?
Well, it's a place where the red rope around import-export is removed. So
you see it as rope, not tape?
I call it twisted, gnarly, ancient stainless steel wire reinforced, frayed and abrasive rope. Right, that's the picture I have.
Just to be clear.
That's the picture I have with what I deal with almost every day. You can see why I get a bit agitated about that. But the whole point about a free trade zone is that it facilitates the easy import and export. The customs side of it is so much simpler. The regulatory side, because once you're in the zone, that's when the simplification starts. So if you make the stuff in the zone, then you've already avoided so much of that red rope.
So who would primarily be responsible for establishing an economic zone? The federal government?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think there's one in Australia yet, but they are in existence around the world. So it's not reinventing the wheel. They do exist, and on many occasions this has been talked about in Australia, and on some occasions it's been talked about the Kwinana area, but not very often. It doesn't go very far because there isn't the support for it. It'll take.
So is that, when you say support, political will?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of Western Australia and Kwinana, and the growing economic opportunities that are existing in the Indian Ocean, where do you see Western Australia moving into the future?
Now this is the bit that worries a lot of people, I think. When we get a deep water port in Kwinana, the new port in Kwinana, we will be able to receive the very large container ships. Now, the negative lobby will say, well, we haven't got the trade to support that. And they're right, because we have this import commodity that all we do is bring in flat screen TVs, basically. So if we generate the export economy, then it all comes together. So the people who don't see this don't see the potential for all of these large, very large container ships coming here. And we can turn, so this is the bottom, one of the bottom ends of the One Belt, One Road China story, up through China, up through Russia, down through Europe, where 60% of the world's population lives. You know, this is so clear to me that it can happen, but we need to take the lead on it. There is an aspect of build it and they will come that the state government is going to have to risk. But I don't see, I see the role of the government, state and federal, to take those risks. They own the land, They don't have to get rid of the land, they don't have to sell the land, they just have to lease it. The private sector will come in and do this if there is the signal and the legislative framework for that to occur. So the Burswood Casino here in Perth, that didn't just happen by accident. The state government of the day said to the world at large, legislation here exists, we want a casino here. Bids please. So the same scenario can apply to the Western Trade Coast, which is a big industrial area, and that includes the Rockingham Industry Zone to the south, which is largely undeveloped, the core Kwinana industrial area, which has still got some quite large vacant lots in there. There's one on Mason Road, 75 hectares, waiting for something big to arrive, and that's great. There's the Latitude 32 area, which is, again, largely undeveloped, and the AMC in Henderson. So there's just the opportunities are amazing. So if we were the bottom of the One Belt One Road, taking these large ships in, our trains going east wouldn't be empty; they would be full because this is the amazing business opportunity that this state, that's looking at this state, but the state's not looking back at yet. If we can get that, then we've got this Australian transport hub here, because the big ships can't get into the eastern states ports. The very big ships can't get into the eastern states ports. Yep. The eastern states ports don't want anything to change because they're okay. But we can take the lead on this if we really want to. And Nicole Lockwood, the chair of the Westport Task Force, gets this. There are a number of politicians that get this, including our local member Roger Cook. It can happen, but what we need is for the Westport Task Force and certain members of government to see it and make it happen, because the state government bureaucracies have got us to this point where, in essence, the state's premier industrial area is constrained. Water, transport infrastructure, governance. And we can talk about that perhaps a little bit later, but what has happened so far has been lethargic. We are now at a tipping point where if the energy that's being created by this new government coming in gets going, this will all happen.
Fantastic. And my understanding, especially within the lithium space and Tianqi, they made a comment about that. I mean, because they're a $700 million investment, and they've got stage 1 opening up at the end of this calendar year, and then there's stage 2 and stage 3. And 4. And my understanding, well, not anymore.
You heard it here first.
And my understanding is that with the advent of batteries and power storage and everything that's happening globally, and the fact that there are a number of countries looking to divest from fossil fuels, battery storage is going to be absolutely massive. And we were told that the operations that are currently being put into Kwinana through Tianqi, we need at least another 20 or so of those to meet the demand going into the future. So, I think it's a huge opportunity for Western Australia to play a much bigger role in that.
Yes, it is.
So, and the more that we can actually attract the companies, because we've got everything here in terms of the cobalt and the nickel and all the other elements of taking the hydroxide and maybe moving off, into creating batteries and other products. So, can you see a lot of this happening at Kwinana?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything exists. We have, subject to the port coming, we have all of those constraints taken away. We have the qualified staff. That's tradies, operators, scientists, engineers, chemists, you name it. They exist in the industrial area right now. It's part of the synergies. It's like a human synergy, resource synergy. One thing that's working against us, though, is that when these companies come to the state to find a place to go, who do they talk to? What are they met with? Some of them in desperation come to see me because they might have been told they can't have any water. So I will help them sort that out. That happens too much. But this is the governance, you see, where is the bit in government that welcomes or is out there doing the international business development to start with, or the Australian business development, but gets them to come in and take a good look at this? I think there's been a philosophy of spreading them out into the regions because that's good for the regions. So the only entity a locational question needs to service is what's in the best interests of the company that's producing the stuff. They've got to be put into an area where they are best placed to compete. And that is in an industrial area like Kwinana, because it's got all this stuff. It's high-end technical expertise and servicing. All of the specialist servicing businesses surround the industrial area. That's the 26,000 secondary employed people. But that's not to say areas like Kemerton or Kalgoorlie or wherever can't specialise, because clustering is about being near so that they can get their own synergies going. It's not about spreading them thin to please everybody. It's about putting them where they will be most pleased, and that's Kwinana. But that's not happening yet.
So you talk about governance and the need to actually have something out there actively attracting industry. Do you think a governance arrangement for Kwinana might be the answer in terms of this red rope that you speak about?
Yes.
Yep.
We have 3 local governments looking after the Western Tracos in the governance role over the Western Tracos. 2 of those local governments would be quite happy to see the buffer zone, the industrial area, move northwards from the south and southwards from the north, squeezing it. Oh, right. The one in the middle that has got the most industrial community within its municipal boundaries gets industry. Our position is there should be one local government over the whole of the Western Tracos, and there is an obvious one for that, which is the Kwinana City Council. But that's not enough, because their role is not to do international business development for the Kwinana industrial area. So something else needs to happen. So from a planning perspective, great to have one local government over the whole Western Tracos. But from a business development sense, it needs to be something different. Now the AMC, the Australian Marine Complex, has its own business development. I think it's under Treasury or Department of Commerce that it worked a treat. There is a classic example of the government taking the risk and building it, and they came. It's full, and it needs to expand. So that's part of the new port in Kwinana, is the southwards expansion of the AMC, and I believe Defence wants some land as well. So here's some triggers to get this, to help get this going. So if you look at the Perth Airport Corporation, the federal government, it's federal government land, and it filled up seemingly overnight with huge warehouses and businesses, and for me it's a great success, and for my board, the board of KIC, my 4 member representatives, it's a success story. We see that and say, wow. So the federal government still controls the airways and the aeroplanes. In this scenario, if that were applied to the Western Tracos, the state government could still control the airways, which are the channels, the equivalent, and the ships. So there's still a role. But in the Perth Airport Corporation model, the corporation, which has 5 shareholders, one of which is the Federal Future Fund, the rest are Australian super funds, paying a lot of money up front for the contract, the lease, the long-term lease, 49 years and 50 years, I think it is, it might be the other way around. And they do everything from potholes to international business development. And there's the model. It works. It's here. There's the precedent.
So people who want to engage at the Perth airport, they go to the
Perth Airport Corporation.
And that's all. So it's like a one-stop shop.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a mini economic zone.
Oh, fantastic. So in terms of looking at that and Kwinana, what are some of the immediate things that need to be done to unlock its potential?
Okay. Rail is constrained. It's sitting at a little bit over 80%.
Yep.
So that means that if you can get another train in, congratulations, but I bet you can't get another one. The simple fix for that is because it's one way in, same way out. So how do you turn that around? We can increase that by 100%, double it, by just putting an east-west link at the bottom of the industrial area. So one way in, different way out. Simple. And it is that simple. The reserve exists, and we're trying to get the reserve reinstated because parts of it were removed many years ago. So the WAPC is in control of that. The Department of Transport wants it back. The Kwinana Loop Railway Act 1968, I think it is, created that, but it's been tampered with at the ends over the years to make it not connect at the ends. So doing that is an easy answer. The capital constrained jetties, Kwinana Bulk Jetty, Kwinana Bulk Terminal, are constrained because the capital comes from the government. The government's got its own priorities, and it's not a good look. It's not a good situation with the debt we have. So public-private partnerships for some of these major assets. Nobody needs to be frightened of those. And again, Perth Airport Corporation model is a great example of a public-private partnership. The government can retain the land and receive value for it up front, and long-term leases in exchange. And the private sector, once the deal is defined, then the private sector investment will look at it, evaluate the risk, and make a bid.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
Fantastic. So thank you, Chris, and thank you to everyone for watching RDA Perth's YouTube channel. And it's been a fantastic discussion on Kwinana. I think there's huge opportunity that exists there. And don't forget to subscribe. And thank you.
Thank you.